By 9. I sold it, the beach house, and I'm starting over, with Kyle. He makes me feel alive again. She laughed on the phone. A light, careless laugh, no guilt, no hesitation. I gripped the phone tightly in my hand, but my voice stayed steady. I see. My name is George Whitaker. I'm 52 years old. And that morning, I was sitting alone in a cold hotel room in Brussels, nearly 6,000 miles from home, where the only sound was the ticking of a wall clock. I used to be a successful businessman. In real estate circles, they called me the guy who reads the fine print, the one who never missed a clause. No matter how buried, at one point, I owned a multi-million-dollar portfolio. I thought I had finally touched financial freedom. But then, the market crashed, the economy spiraled, and like so many others, I lost nearly everything. My office space was repossessed. My investments dissolved like foam on the shore. I tried, I fought, I pulled myself up, one bruised step at a time. But some nights, in that coastal house, I'd sit alone with an unopened bottle of wine, staring at a bank statement, and had no one to talk to. I thought I was just lonely, until I realized I'd been left behind. That call from Vanessa, my wife, came just as I was finalizing one last deal on a business trip. It was supposed to be the Hail Mary, the deal that would breathe life back into my company. But she didn't ask how it went. She didn't ask if I was okay. She just said, in that calm, almost gentle voice, "Kyle and I need a fresh start. I sold the house in Amelia Island. You can stay in a hotel when you get back." Amelia Island. The home we once called our forever house. The one where I had replaced every plank of floorboard with my own hands. Rebuilt the kitchen. Installed every storm window myself. The place I invested more than money in, my hope, my love, my years. And she sold it, without me there, without a question, without a single document signed. I didn't scream. I didn't smash anything. I just sat there, in the gray morning light of Europe, opened my laptop, and began typing an email. It was addressed to Monica, my real estate processor of 10 years, and Brian, my attorney, who'd been with me longer than Vanessa ever was. The subject line was short. Urgent, fraudulent transaction. Outside, it had started to rain. I watched strangers scurry past the hotel window. Umbrellas overhead, ducking into cafes. And me? Sitting in the wreckage of a broken marriage and a once proud career. Holding on to one last thing. I was still the only person with the original deed to that house. And the thing Vanessa didn't know. She never had the legal right to sell it. We used to love each other. I truly believed that, deep down, with the kind of faith only a middle-aged man clinging to decency in a cynical world could still have. I met Vanessa at a real estate seminar in Orlando. She wasn't like anyone else in the room, no fake smile. No sleazy pitch. She just stood there, confident, sharp, certain of what she wanted, and exactly how to make others listen. I wasn't easy to impress. But with her, I felt like my guard dropped. A year later, we were married. No big party, no white dress, no roses, just a late afternoon at the county courthouse. I signed the marriage certificate with her hand in mine, believing with all my heart that we'd go the distance. 3 years later, we bought the Amelia Island house. 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, a curved balcony overlooking the ocean. Price tag, $1.2 million. I put in nearly all my savings, and took out a hefty mortgage on top of it. But I never regretted it. I worked long days. Weekends were for fixing the house. Piece by piece, I rebuilt the kitchen, repainted every wall, installed hurricane doors one by one. And Vanessa? She picked out the lighting, ordered Italian rugs, bought crystal stemware, and placed potted plants in just the right spots to catch the sun. The first night we moved in, she raised her glass under the warm glow of our new lights. Her eyes gleamed as she said, "This will be our forever home." I believed her. I believed without question. Because when a woman looks at you like that, you're not thinking about signatures at the bottom of a contract. You're thinking, I chose right. She's the one. We had a good life for over a decade. She left her old job to open her own interior design business. I traveled the world signing deals. And I always tried to build in 2 or 3 extra days to bring her along. Paris, Tokyo, Barcelona. We had photos in the snow. We shared red wine on a hotel balcony in Florence. We laughed, really laughed, together. And I kept thinking, love doesn't need checking. Doesn't need guarding. But love doesn't die loudly. It fades. Like a crack in the foundation. You don't notice it until the floor gives out beneath you. 2 years ago, she started to change. She stopped asking about my work. She no longer counted down the days until I got home. Her messages turned cold. Good luck. Have fun at your meeting. Gone were the I miss yous, or come home soon. Then came the gym. She said she wanted to get stronger, leaner, more in control. I supported her, truly. But the bills started getting strange. Spa days, with friends. Dinners I wasn't invited to. Weekend getaways I knew nothing about. I didn't question her. I didn't plant a tracker. I didn't hire a private investigator. I just sat there, night after night, staring at credit card statements thinking, what happened to the woman who once called this house forever? But after a while, I stopped asking. I started preparing, not for her to leave, but for the sinking feeling that I was losing everything. And no one even noticed. Losing my job, losing my business, and now, losing the only thing I had left. Someone to share that with. I used to think love in marriage was enough. That if you were honest, tried hard, and listened, people wouldn't walk away. But sometimes, kindness doesn't save a home. Not because it's not enough, but because the one staying no longer values it. I don't blame Vanessa. Not entirely. What we had was once beautiful, real, deeply connected. But one day, she stopped opening up, and I in turn, stopped hoping. I realized I was living with someone I loved, but no longer trusted. So I did the one thing I've always been good at, managing risk. 11 months before that phone call where she told me she sold the house, I signed a series of documents, buried deep among a pile of refinancing files for a Tampa property. Was one set labeled, Asset Transfer, George Whitaker Living Trust. Vanessa was there that day. She showed up 20 minutes late, eyes glued to her phone, still tapping out messages as she sat down. Brian, the lawyer who was also my best man, just looked at me. Then quietly slid the pen forward. This is for portfolio restructuring, I explained gently, to protect both of us. She laughed, signing without hesitation. You know I never understand this stuff anyway. I nodded. There was nothing deceptive in my voice. I truly did want to protect us both. But, she wasn't really with me anymore. And I needed to be sure, if things went bad, at the very least, I wouldn't walk away empty-handed. I didn't tell anyone. Didn't keep the documents at home. I carried the notarized copy with me, tucked in my suitcase. Alongside my passport, an old leather notebook, and the last handwritten letter my father gave me before he died. Hold on to what you bled for, son, because when people stop needing you, they won't send a warning. I never thought I'd need to use it. I never wanted to use it. But when she called, from somewhere in the US, with Kyle by her side, telling me the house had already been sold, the first question I asked wasn't, why? It was, what day did you sign the sale contract? And when she answered, yesterday, I knew. She had just made a mistake I'd blocked a year ago. I skipped lunch that day. No wine, no coffee. I opened my laptop and wrote a very short email to Monica, my real estate paperwork manager for a decade, and Brian, who already knew what was coming. Urgent, unauthorized transaction in progress. Activate asset protection clause. Deed copy attached. George. No rage, no blame. Just quiet certainty. Because I'd seen this moment coming. And I'd prepared not to collapse again. I gave no warning. Not a text. Not a hint. So that Saturday afternoon, as the sun began to slide down the wooden steps of our porch, I drove straight from the airport back to the house. Same road, same trees casting long shadows toward the ocean. But this time, there was no warmth in the return. Only silence, thick, heavy, like the sea air before a storm. There it was. A black convertible Mercedes parked in the spot where I always used to park. I didn't need to guess. I knew it was Kyle's. I turned off the engine, took out the keys, and stepped out, slowly. Like every step was weighing my pride before I laid it on the table. The door was unlocked, And then, laughter. Floating in from the kitchen. Light, effortless, foreign. I heard Kyle's voice. He was saying something about knocking down the wall between the living room and the dining room to open up the space. And Vanessa laughed. The laugh of someone who believed the past was buried deep enough never to rise again. I set my suitcase down and walked straight in. The kitchen greeted me with the scent of champagne, golden light, and the sight of two people leaning into each other as if they were touring a model home. Not standing in the house I spent a lifetime building. Vanessa was wearing a dress I'd never seen before. Glass of wine in hand. Kyle stood behind her, one arm around her waist like he'd always belonged there. When I stepped in, she flinched, just for a fraction of a second. Then, like she had rehearsed it, she quickly recovered. "George," she said, with a strained little smile. "I thought you were coming back Monday." I looked at her, then at Kyle, and said quietly, "Clearly, you weren't waiting." Kyle shifted awkwardly. His hand dropped from her waist. His eyes darted toward the door like it was his exit strategy. I should probably go," he muttered. "No," I said, calmly blocking with my voice. "You should stay. Because this concerns you too." Vanessa furrowed her brow, trying to hold onto some air of control. "George, don't make this harder than it has to be. I haven't been happy for a long time. We both deserve a fresh start." I nodded slowly. "I agree. That's why I already spoke to my attorney. About the illegal transaction you just tried to execute." Her face went pale. Her hand stiffened around the wine glass. "Transaction?" she asked, trying to sound composed, but I caught it. That brief flicker of panic in her eyes. I opened the leather briefcase I'd brought with me, pulled out the certified documents, laid them gently on the cold granite countertop. "This house hasn't been in both our names for nearly a year," I said calmly. "It belongs to the George Whitaker Living Trust, and the only person authorized to sign any transaction is me." Kyle turned to look at her, his expression beginning to shift. "Wait, you said it was sold? That it was done?" "It was. I mean, there must be some mistake," she stammered, flipping through the folder, page after page, as if one of them might open into an escape hatch. I looked at her, not with satisfaction, not with anger, just pain. Pain because this was once the woman who trusted me enough to sign without reading. And now, she looked at me like I was a stranger setting a trap. "There's no mistake here," I said softly. "At most, a little carelessness. And maybe some overconfidence." Kyle visibly trembled. He took a step back. I'm going to go wait in the car. Vanessa, call me when you're done." And just like that, he vanished through the doorway, leaving the room still and exposed. Vanessa turned back to me, her face now completely drained of color. "You tricked me," she said quietly, almost choking on the words. You made me sign something I didn't understand." I met her eyes. "No. I did what I always do, read everything carefully. You chose not to, and you assumed everything would always belong to you." The next morning, I met with Brian, my attorney of nearly 20 years. From my very first real estate deal to now, sitting on the edge of what used to be my marriage. We sat in his office. Quiet, discreet, soundproofed. Just like Brian himself, never flashy, never loud, but always solid. "There's more," he said, getting straight to the point, sliding a file toward me. I opened it, and my chest tightened. Bank statements, line after line of withdrawals. Over $170 had been siphoned from our joint account. Bit by bit, steady, silent, like a slow knife, no sharp pain at first, just deeper cuts over time. Vanessa opened a separate account last year. Brian continued. First transaction was exactly 11 months ago, the same week she signed the house into the trust. "You remember that, right?" I nodded, fists clenching without realizing it. "That was nearly our entire emergency fund," I whispered. Brian didn't respond. He just slid another file across the desk. Business license, lease agreement, equity partnership contract, with a familiar name, Kyle Bennett. The two of them were co-founding a high-end gym in downtown Savannah, registered 3 months ago. Before Vanessa said goodbye. Before I knew anything was happening. So, it had all been planned. Every step. "And this too," Brian added, sliding over another page. The buyer of the beach house? Not a random third party. It was a shell company. Owned by Jason Bennett, Kyle's younger brother. I sat there. No words. No outburst. Because some moments, silence isn't weakness. It's the only thing holding a man together from the inside out. I flipped through the pages. Every detail, every number. Undeniable. Vanessa didn't just betray me with her heart. She betrayed me with a financial blueprint, designed to leave me penniless before I even realized what was happening. She didn't leave because she fell out of love. She left after draining almost all the blood from our shared veins. After ensuring the house would be sold cheaply to her lover's brother. And after assuming that I, the too nice, too logical, too trusting husband, would do absolutely nothing. Brian looked at me with sympathy in his eyes, but firmness in his voice. George, what do you want to do? I clenched my hands, looked up, and for the first time in months, after being swept through a storm of emotions, I spoke with a voice that didn't shake anymore. I want to take back what's mine. And if I have to, I want them to know exactly what it feels like to be hurt so badly. You can't even scream. That afternoon, I didn't go home. I went to the hotel, ordered a coffee, and sat down to read every page of the finalized divorce agreement Brian had just prepared. It was a long document. Cold, sharp as steel. Vanessa would return 60% of the funds she withdrew from our joint account. She would forfeit all claims to the house on Amelia Island. She would waive any rights to shares in my private company. And in return, I would not press criminal charges. Brian said quietly, if she agrees, we end it here. If not, court, press, criminal law, and she won't have anywhere left to run. I was silent for a long time. Then I looked him in the eye. Send it, and prepare for the worst case scenario. That night, I didn't sleep. I thought about the years I spent building that marriage. About every board I hammered onto our porch. Every late-night flower shop stop just because I knew she loved white lilies. I thought about the last dinner we laughed through. And I thought about the day she called and laughed, telling me she'd sold the house. The next morning, 8:12 a.m., my phone buzzed. A message from Vanessa. My lawyer says you're bluffing. Assets are jointly owned. The trust is invalid. See you in court. I didn't respond. I just handed the phone to Brian. He read the screen, exhaled, and shook his head. She just made the worst move she could have made. And now, we let the truth do the talking. At 10 a.m., we filed the official complaint with the court. It included a motion to freeze any and all transactions tied to the beach house, a request for fraud investigation, and notarized supporting evidence. By noon, the paperwork was stamped. Vanessa could no longer sell the house. She could no longer strip me of my ownership rights. And she could no longer cast me as the boring old husband to clear the runway for her new fantasy life with her gym boyfriend. I spent the entire afternoon closing joint accounts, reassigning investments, canceling secondary credit cards, and most importantly, cutting off all automatic payments to Elite Fitness, the gym Kyle was running. When I finished, every financial tie between me and Vanessa was officially severed. Around 2 p.m., I drove back to Amelia Island. The house was quiet. She wasn't there. Only Kyle, with a confused look on his face, stuffing clothes into a gym duffel bag. I'm just here to get my stuff, he said, not meeting my eyes. Vanessa, she told me not to say anything. I stood in the doorway, arms crossed. She told you I was controlling? That I abandoned her for work? That I held her back from growing into her potential? Kyle said nothing. I looked at him, my voice steady, every word hitting the walls like a quiet echo. And what about starting a business with money from our joint account? Or using your brother's name to buy this house at a discount just to flip it after kicking me out? Is that what you call self-growth too? Kyle stayed silent. His hands trembled as he picked up his bag and headed for the door. I added one last thing, calm but sharp. Tell Jason, your brother, that if he doesn't pull out of the house deal by 6 p.m. tonight, all three of you will be named in a real estate fraud complaint. I didn't need to threaten. I was just stating the law. And for the first time, I saw real fear in Kyle's eyes. 3 weeks after I sent that ultimatum, we met, for the first and last time, in the conference room of my attorney's office. No courtroom, No judge, no jury, just a bright white room. One long table, 4 chairs, and the full weight of truth about to be laid down. Vanessa sat across from me. No cold smirk, no fancy dress, no sarcastic tone. She wore a buttoned-up blouse. Her face was like stone. And her eyes, the ones that once looked at me with such soft light, were now blank, like they were hiding something even she couldn't fully understand. Her lawyer, a young man who wouldn't make eye contact, sorted through papers nervously. Me? I didn't need to look at the files. I knew every page, every period, every clause. Deed to the house, titled to the George Whitaker Living Trust. Bank statements showing $170 withdrawn. The gym partnership agreement in Savannah. And finally, a notarized affidavit from Jason Bennett, confirming the beach house transaction was orchestrated by Vanessa and Kyle. Brian placed each document on the table, quietly, without drama, but each one landed like a hammer, thickening the air in the room. We're open to settlement, Brian said, calmly. Vanessa said nothing. She just stared at me like she still couldn't understand how everything had crumbled, while it was her own hand that removed every brick from the foundation. What kind of settlement? She asked, her voice raspy. Brian slid the proposal across the table. Repay $100 of the withdrawn funds. Relinquish all claims to the house and any related real estate. Stay entirely out of George's future business dealings. And in return, George would not pursue criminal charges. Her young lawyer went pale reading Jason's affidavit. He leaned toward Vanessa, whispering something. Her face changed. I looked at her, not with satisfaction, but to imprint in my memory the face of someone who once meant everything, and now sat across from me as a stranger under the law. You can't do this, she whispered. You can't destroy me like this. I shook my head. I'm not destroying anyone. I'm protecting myself. The way I should have done a long time ago. She turned away. I didn't know if she was holding back tears, or swallowing her pride. Finally, her lawyer spoke up, his voice trembling. We accept the terms. She didn't look at me as she signed. Her hand trembled slightly, but the signature was still beautiful. Still the same handwriting I'd seen 1,000 times. On birthday cards, tax forms, on that very first love letter she left in my suitcase in Rome all those years ago. I signed last. Light, decisive, without hesitation. 15 years. Ended with a single stroke of black ink. No tears, no begging, just silence, and one undeniable truth. I didn't lose. I stood tall, and I held onto the one thing that mattered most, myself. 6 months later, I stood on the balcony of the beach house, coffee in hand, the ocean breeze brushing past my skin. The waves kept rolling in, calmly, endlessly, as if nothing had changed. But I had. I replaced the porch flooring, fixed the rotting roof, got rid of the bench where we used to sip wine at sunset. I put a single chair in its place. Just enough for one person, and peace. The house wasn't a memory anymore. It was proof that some things, no matter who tries to take them from you, can't be stolen, if you're clear-minded enough to protect them with your own hands. Word travels fast in a small town like Amelia Island. I didn't ask, but people still talked about how Kyle left just a week after Vanessa found out she couldn't sell the house. How he screamed, threw things, how he called her a failure, an idiot, a used-up product. And then, he hit her. The first time, then the second, not over money, but because he no longer needed to fake being gentle. Vanessa ended up in the hospital. Bruises down her back, a sprained wrist, and eyes that had lost every trace of light. They said, she cried. Not because of the pain, but because she finally realized. She hadn't just lost a house. Not just money, but the only person who had ever looked at her with love. Even when she was nothing. I didn't visit. I didn't call. But one day, while installing a new irrigation system in the backyard, I saw her, standing beyond the fence. Hair messy, eyes sunken, one arm still in a bandage. She didn't come in, just stood there, looked at me with red, swollen eyes. No arrogance, no anger, just layers and layers of regret, crashing like waves against the shore, with no place left to go. I looked back, said nothing, didn't move, Just nodded. The way you greet someone who used to be close, but now feels like a stranger from another life. She opened her mouth, maybe to say, I'm sorry. Maybe to say, I was wrong. Or maybe it was just a breath, caught between two silent sobs. But I turned away, not out of hate, but because my heart had no room left for love. And no space left for bitterness either. She walked away, left no words behind. And this time, I knew she was truly gone. No more lies. No more contracts. No more games left to play. Now, I live alone. The house is no longer a reminder. It's a recovery. I've started a small company again. Investing slowly. No rush. No ego. I smile more. Call old friends. Spend time repairing a vintage watch I once promised I'd fix for my father. I live, and I live kindly. People ask me if I'm still angry. I'm not. Because some pain, if you face it the right way, doesn't break you. It builds you into someone who has nothing left to fear. And that is the story of George. A man who was abandoned at his weakest, but who didn't seek revenge through destruction. He chose resilience, the kind that comes when you have nothing left to lose but yourself. Some say he's cold, some say he's lucky, but if you've ever been betrayed while clawing your way back from rock bottom, you'll understand. The strongest thing you can ever do is stand back up. Without bitterness, and without looking back. As for Vanessa, she walked away, traded a man who loved her unconditionally for the illusion of someone who only loved her conditionally. And the price she paid? It wasn't the money. It wasn't the house. It was that final moment, when the man who once loved her looked at her with nothing left in his eyes. What about you? If it were you in this story, would you forgive? Or would you walk forward like George did? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story touched something inside you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Reddit Stories Telltale, where we tell the saddest stories, to remind you that even after the wreckage, there's always a road home. Wishing you a peaceful night. We'll see you in the next story.